slowest cars you'll ever see on a race circuit anywhere in the world. It's taking place here, of course, in Toulouse at the CEMIS laboratory, which is part of the CNRS. And talking of the CNRS, I'll have very soon just here the Deputy Scientific Director of the Institute of Chemistry at the CNRS. She'll be joining us just in a few minutes. And we'll also be talking to the team from Ohio, who'll be explaining how their car's doing. I understand that what's unique about their car is that it sometimes seems to have the reverse stick in motion. It seems to be going backwards sometimes and then goes forward and then backwards. We'll have a lot of update on that in this half hour, a lot to talk about. But first, let's talk to our star here, who's in charge of this whole race, and he's the Director of Research at the CNRS, Christian.
Hi, Chris. Good morning. This time.
Now, I think you've got an update for all our people who are watching us on the French team.
The French team and also Japanese team.
Go ahead.
So I go for the Japanese team first. At 8 o'clock this morning, they have announced in Japan that they abandoned due to all the trouble they get over the night and the day before. So I feel very, very sorry for these fantastic teams, especially for the driver, Huyo, and the co-driver, and for Waka. So
we can see here
the ranking, and the same thing for the Green Buggies. The Green Buggies, the French team is a bit different because they lost, as you remember, they lost their as they called TT2 during the night, and so but finally they find a new one at 10 o'clock in the morning. So and they try this new one to bring it on the track, and they are still trying to bring it again on the track. So, but we decide not to put a cross because we don't know what will happen yet if they succeed to start the engine again. So they are manipulating the molecule, as we say here, and we see in a few hours what's happened.
The Germans also, not doing so well. They're not advancing.
I will not say that. I feel very sorry for Japan because I'm too tired. For German, like for Japan, they work so hard during 2 days to prepare their track, everything. And remember, 11 o'clock yesterday morning, everything crashed, plof, and they lose everything, as we call this morning. So I feel very sorry for those two teams, really.
Ok, on va expliquer en français. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé à l'équipe française?
Pour l'équipe française, d'abord. L'équipe française, on se rappelle que la nuit dernière, ils ont perdu Titine 2, on ne sait pas où il est passé. Donc ils ont recherché ce matin, à 10 h, ils ont trouvé une voiture qu'ils appellent Titine 3. Les Français reconnaîtront Titine 1, 2 ou 3. Et ils sont en train maintenant d'essayer de la remettre sur la piste, maintenant qu'ils en ont trouvé une nouvelle. Un peu comme c'était prévu dans le règlement d'ailleurs, mais on ne sait même pas s'ils vont réussir à la faire redémarrer. Et je mentionne aussi l'équipe japonaise qui a abandonné à 8 h du matin. On était malheureusement en direct à 8 h du matin avec le musée des sciences de Tokyo. Et c'est en direct à Tokyo, parmi tous les followers de YouTube, qu'ils ont décidé d'abandonner.
Ok, Christian, merci beaucoup. On va vous laisser retourner dans la salle avec tous les gens qui sont toujours en course. Et on vous voit un peu plus tard dans l'après-midi.
Je peux manger
Allez-y, vous pouvez manger, vous avez mérité. Donc à bientôt. Gardez le microphone et on se voit un peu plus tard. Ok? Et on voit dans la salle. Okay. Maintenant, je vais accueillir l'équipe. I'm going to bring in the team from the United States, Ohio. Come in, gentlemen.
Bonjour.
Hello. How's your French?
My French, bonjour.
And yours?
My French is fine. I'm from Switzerland, so my French is okay.
Yeah, that's all about it, my French.
So, the Ohio Bobcats. Because you're based in Ohio?
Yes.
So, your American colleagues with the Austrians seem to have done pretty well. What's happened to you two?
I think we are also doing, after them, we are doing okay. We already reached now the 39 nanometer. It's not because of our speed, by the way. Our car is super fast. And, but the problem is we have a kind of in a track, we have an area which is attracting our car to stay there in a way,
right,
because of the elbow of the Harriman reconstructions. Well, in a layman term, it's like we are off the road and a little bit in the mud, so we are trying to rescue the car to come out of the road.
So you need a tow truck.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you this picture. This is your family. This is your team.
Yes.
Can we have that graphic again of the team on the Bobcats? Can you bring that back up? Okay. Tell me your names, both of you, and who are the rest of your team?
So my name is So Wei La. I'm a professor of physics and director of condensed and surface science at Ohio University, and also happen to be a group leader in Argonne National Lab.
And I'm Eric Masson. I'm a professor of chemistry at Ohio University, and I'm the designer of the nanocars. I'm the chemist.
And your two colleagues?
And my graduate student, this is my graduate student, Kondalarao Koturi. And there are also 3 other students that were involved in this race, 2 other graduate students, Mersad and Ramin, and a postdoctoral fellow, Karti. So 4.
So the driver, the Ryan Tumbleson, is my undergrad student.
Okay.
Probably he's the only undergrad student who come here to drive the car. And I have a number of other undergrad graduate students, PhD students. At least right now, 4 PhD students are helping us to drive the car from Ohio at this particular moment. And because we are running our cars there, remote from here, so.
It's quite, that technology had the
Right.
microscopes thousands of miles away and you're putting it in.
Correct. So we are probably the only group running cross-Atlantic. Our cars are there, we are driving from here. and right this particular moment, we have a thunderstorms in Ohio, and I've been informed that there's a lot of rain, and my students are very worried that the power may cut off, and we need to hurry.
That is correct.
We have a little report on your team and what you've been doing. So first of all, before we talk about how your progress, let's go look at this report together on your team from Ohio.
The car has an H-shaped chassis, and it has 4 cucurbitryl wheels which self-assemble in water with the chassis to form a 5-member assembly that is our Bobcat nano wagon. And after removing water, my colleague from physics, Professor Hla, is evaporating the structure onto a gold surface and then studying it by STM. Our car has 2 main features. First of all, it does resemble a 20th or 21st century car. And second, we wanted the wheels to be cylindrical, and we wanted them not to be covalently linked with the chassis. So basically, the chassis is floating into the wheels, and we've got some built-in suspension. I mean, the goal is to participate, and if we can win, sure, we'll be happy to win.
Now, one thing which seems to be unique about your car is that sometimes it seems to go into reverse.
Actually, we did it by purpose, and I think Eric can explain it. There's a design.
Right. So as you can see on the video, there is a chassis that has an H-like shape, and there are 4 wheels. And if you look at the structure of the molecule, basically all the areas surrounding the molecule are positive, but there is one area that is at the front axle and at the rear axle that is slightly partially negative. So depending on where we hit the car, either with a positive or negative bias, we can attract the car or we can repulse. We can trigger repulsion.
Also, I guess if you're stuck in the mud, as you said, you need to reverse to get out of that.
That's what we are doing. So the only problem we have is we have to find out which part of the car we have to pulse in order to move forward and backward. So if you look at the structure, it looks uniform. So initially it's difficult to determine, but we already figure out that it is working actually as designed, and so we are now trying to move forward and backward, trying to escape from the mud.
And another feature of the car is that the drive shaft can rotate. So the rear axle and the front axle can rotate, so it can adapt to rough terrain. So if there are like big hills, it can adapt.
As we look globally at this kind of the bigger picture on this race, is what you're doing going to have a practical impact? You're a professor, you're serious engineers in the States. Will there be long-term benefits of what you're doing in terms of the real world?
Yes, of course. Of course, we are not going to sell these little nano cars to drive. Who will buy this? But we have a mission. So the whole goal is to develop controlled transport at the molecular scale. So we are made of molecular machines, you, I, and everybody here as part of the molecular machines in our body. But we want to mimic nature, and we want to control the system so we can develop, so that we can make a nanoscale information transport, or, for example, actually build up things. And so that's the idea. We are still way behind. It's just the very beginning.
And I would say for a chemist, the wheels are really fascinating. They are pumpkin-shaped molecules that are hollow, that have a hole in them. And of course, we can capture all kinds of bioactive or interesting molecules inside the cavity and give them some other fancy properties.
Now, for example, over here, the CNRS and the nanoscience team are working with, for example, Michelin. They're working with a lot of European industry. Is it the same in the States? Are you working with American big business?
Yeah. So for this race, due to time constraints, we could not. We were really busy working on the car,
Yeah.
and we can see the design is pretty sophisticated. So we did not pursue that, that line of action. But for the next one,
Yeah, for next one we will. For the moment, our goal is purely the basic science, and as I said, we are not planning to sell these cars for driving. It won't happen. But there is a scientific advantage that we are really happy for because we spend a lot of time, especially Eric, and he is the one who synthesized the molecules. The cars, the wheels here are the first time, in my understanding, is that those wheels are not chemically bonded to the
right.
to the things.
So
They are mechanically locked.
that's the first case of a supramolecular car. So supramolecular meaning we have an interaction between molecules that are not covalently linked. So basically here, the chassis, the H-shaped chassis, is floating into the wheels. So we've got some built-in suspension.
Now, one of the teams has just two wheels. I think it's the Austrian-American team. That's right.
But they are covalently linked to the chassis.
Right.
And not ours.
But I think their idea was by having just two wheels, that helped them have less traction, so they went faster.
Well, I think the question, we are all colleagues, so I don't want to say anything good or bad, but the question we need to have is whether the wheel is rolling or sliding. We don't know. In our case also, we design for the rolling. We do expect that it's rolling. However, we don't know yet. So we have to find out. So it's like, sliding, or let's say like a frog, you are jumping. So it may be car shaped, but it's not the real car. The real car has to roll the wheel, right? So the wheel has to roll.
Well, the Ohio Bobcat team, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And I'll let you get, it was great to hear from you and know what you're actually working on. And we'll be seeing you by the end of this at the end of the day. And thank you very much. So I'll let you go back to analysing and getting out of the mud and getting back into fifth gear. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very
That's
much.
Okay,
serious.
thanks a lot.
Yes,
Thank you.
So just a reminder as they leave that maybe we should show the rankings again and show the path that the various teams have been taken. Maybe we can have, we can put up that script. Here we go. You can see here, of course, that the Swiss team arrived. You can see that they arrived last night. And of course, we had the Austrian-American team. They arrived first. They were running on a silver surface. All the others are on gold. Sadly, the Japanese and the French are... the Japanese, their car was completely damaged. The French are doing another race, an alternative sort of race, because they've had some problems with their car as well. To explain all this now, I'm joined by our next guest, who is none other than Claire-Marie Pradier, who is, in English anyway, Deputy Scientific Director of the Institute of Chemistry. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure for me.
A lot of people who are watching have one particular question. This race is fun, a lot of people are watching it, we're enjoying it. In real terms, what does it mean for actually applied science?
Applied science, you don't want me to talk about the fantastic innovation which has been made in what CNRS could call basic science, which is not opposed to fundamental applied science, but I think they are linked. But they rely on this innovation in basic science in various fields where CNRS is proud. Among them, one can cite chemistry, synthesis, surface science, and of course, instrumentation. So let me talk about synthesis, which of course starts with the design of molecules, where these researchers are expert and they think about the molecules which will be probably prompt to react to a very small amount of energy to change conformation and move on the surface. So then they make synthesis of these molecules step by step. And even in some case, the design and the synthesis of molecule led the researchers to do the synthesis on the surface. So this opens to really very new applications, is what you
And I
asked
think
me.
we have actually videos showing the gold surface.
So
Maybe
yes,
we can
now
show
we
that.
come to the surface, which in our
Explain,
case,
yeah,
it's a gold
explain
surface.
all this.
So the gold surface is a small piece of gold, which is a single crystal, which means that it's with no defect and a perfect structure of the surface at the atomic scale. So this is the sample, and it will be put on a special sample holder in order to be put in the microscope under ultra-high vacuum. And this will make the surface possible to be cleaned from any impurity, and with a perfect surface structure. And as a matter of fact, the originality, the peculiarity of this gold surface is that it has not a really flat structure, but what we call herringbones. We see here these herringbones, which means that there are some, it's not completely flat, but there are regular bumps on the surface, which in fact creates fantastic tracks for what we call nanocars today. This, of course, means that when the molecules will come to the surface, they will interact with the surface.
And I think you have a herringbone
Yes,
example
this
here.
is an example. I don't know if you can see it.
If the camera can pick that up, yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah, so there are these herringbones, and the molecules are expected to come in between those two volumes here, and to have controlled interaction with the surface. And this, of course, calls for the expertise of the chemist, which will make the right bonds, the right type of atoms interacting with gold, but not interacting too much, otherwise the molecules will not be able to go. So this is really the surface where the molecules will be deposited. Deposited of molecules is another challenge. Means that once they are synthesized, we have a powder made of constituting the molecules, and they will need to be evaporated in the ultra vacuum chamber. Another challenge, because of course the risk is that they break when they come to the surface.
In real life, this kind of track, could we see something like this in real life down the road, or does it help adjust the way that maybe roads are made in the future?
I don't know if we can talk about road, because I'm afraid I don't think real cars are the applications which one could imagine. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the surface, which could be that one gold surface, which could be used in, for example, in molecular electronics, and of course, for which people will have to take into account the roughness of the surface. So this is an example where this can be similar. Another example, if one day, one can dream, if one day one could imagine that we have several of these nanocars, several of these nanorobots that could be driven together, then those will have to be driven on a surface which will not be flat. Let's take the membrane of a cell for repairing cell, or let's take the example of drug delivery in the human body. This will not be flat surfaces. And the interaction, the surface chemistry of these materials will have to be understood also.
Now, the CNRS, which is probably Europe's biggest scientific national research facility, is involved in so many different areas and projects. What's the importance for the CNRS to be involved in this nanoscience technology?
Very important for the CNRS to be involved in this nanotechnology and to make them visible to the large community. And this is
like today.
Like this event allows it. I think it's the way, it's really an example or several examples, chemistry, but also physics, instrumentation. And these are support, well, CNRS has to be involved in effort to make innovation, to make progresses in this field in order to think about new applications and to make them visible.
Precisely, tell me, what are the kind of applications we're talking about for the future?
Well, I talked to you about molecular electronics. Let's imagine memories which could have a very reduced size. I heard all other teams talking about very small computers, nanosite computers. I talked to you about nanomedicine, and everybody today have heard about nanomedicine.
Well, tell us more.
Tell us more. One could imagine that we would have molecular systems inside the body that would come to a dedicated place. They would be driven, of course, not by a STM tip, not by a tip inside the body, but we could imagine that we could have electronic impulsion inside the body that could drive these nanorobots to the right place. Why not? It's not for tomorrow.
Yeah, let's say
But,
we can't go to our doctor and get that done yet.
No, not yet, but I think we can dream. We must dream.
And so your thoughts as the nano car race comes soon to an end, your thoughts about this whole thing?
I'm not sure, and I think it's the privilege of researchers that they don't have to be completely guided by the applications, but at least they are guided by challenges.
Yeah. Your thoughts about this race? There's more of that as you look back on this.
Yes, well, to be frank with you, when I thought about this race, I thought, well, I think research will give the image of competitions between several teams. And as soon as we are, and now we are in, I discovered that it's not a competition, it's a common adventure. And I even saw pilots or co-pilots from one team helping pilots from another team. So I think it's really proof that the science is a common adventure, a human adventure, and that CNRS must support.
Well, thank you very much. It's Claire-Marie Pradier, who's Deputy Scientific Director of the Institute of Chemistry here at the CNRS. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
As we just come to the end to conclude this part of our live here of the race of the century, just to remind you that we'll be back at 3 o'clock with an update. We'll be talking to the German team, Windmill, about what they've been going through over the last 36 hours. And we'll have them talking about that, and we'll have an update on the race. We'll see how things are going as we begin to wind down to the end of what's been a very exciting 36-hour race involving the smallest cars you'll ever see. We'll be back with you at 3 o'clock French time, so do join us then. We'll leave you, of course, with the live pictures from the racing control room, as always, and you'll get a chance to see what's happening over there. So see you soon.